Alright guys, welcome to another Solidworks tutorial. Today we will be working on the Galaxy S8 phone. This was a recommendation from another student in class who wanted to get a little practice on designing handheld devices like cell phones. So here is my completed model, just to kind of give you an idea what you'll be working on and what the finished product should look like. But let's go ahead and get started on a brand new part. Alright, so like we have in the past, go open SolidWorks and click on New Document and then Part. And once again, make sure that your measurements are in millimeters. You can double check that again by looking at the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and you should see an MMGS. If you don't see that, click on it and make sure that's selected, which is millimeters. Okay. 1 second. Surface so in this tutorial we are going to be working with a new tool called surfacing. Now this can seem a little complex at first, but it's kind of like, taking a piece of paper and folding it to create complex shapes, and then gluing those pieces of paper together to create one solid shape. So, or three-dimensional shape. So, let's first start on our top plane. And we are going to be drawing the top curve of the phone first. Now, if you don't know what that looks like, if you haven't seen the Galaxy S8 before, you can go ahead and Google it. And the way I modeled it first was, I looked at some general dimensions online, and you can do this yourself for future projects. It's just like we do with the pencil sharpener, where you use some 2D images of like the front profile, the side profile, and you can use those as reference sketches. But just for the sake of this lesson, just follow along with me. I will give you the dimensions that you need to know. That way we can move along quickly, and we can test out some new features that SolidWorks has to offer. Alright, so now that you're on the top plane, we are going to draw, do a midpoint line here. So, sketch, line, midpoint line. Oop, there we go. Click on your origin, and we're going to draw a horizontal line. Now remember, if you drew it correctly, you should see a yellow and black icon appear by your cursor that shows that you are on the horizontal axis. If not, it disappears. So you always want to try and have that little snap point when you're drawing a horizontal line, so that you don't have to go back and select it and click horizontal relation. It's just another way to quickly make sketches without adding a bunch of extra steps. So we're going to make this a construction line. Alright, and then we're going to model this 73 millimeters. And then we're going to do another center line here. So that's another construction line. And we're going to dimension that 2 millimeters. And one issue that some students were having, and you don't do this with me, I'm just going to show you what some people are doing. They're drawing a line, and when they're dimensioning, they're accidentally clicking this point in the middle here. That can happen especially if your line is is quite small, like something like this, it's really easy to accidentally hit the middle point as opposed to the line itself. And if you do that, if you hit the middle point, you dimension to the midpoint of that line and not the actual line itself. So you can see if I click the line, I can dimension the length of the line. If I hit the midpoint, it's going to give me the dimension of the midpoint of the line. Alright, so I'm just going to delete that. Now we're going to do another center line on the origin vertically. Make sure you have that relation set. And now we're going to do another midpoint line, which basically means it extends out equally in both directions from the point that you clicked. Alright, so I'm just going to drag that to about right there. And I'm going to dimension this line 61 millimeters. Once again, make sure that's horizontal. And then I'm going to do a circle tool here. I'm just going to kind of click anywhere. I don't want to click anywhere that I want to get any snap points. I just want to click in the air here, drag it up to this point on the line. And what we want is we want this circle to be tangent to this line. And you'll see what that means if you don't already. So I clicked on both lines, and I clicked on the circle and the line while holding down Shift so that I have both selected. I click tangent, which means that this line is going to run in perfectly, create a perfect, well, let's see, tangency to the circle, so there's a nice smooth transition. Alright, and now I want to select the circle again and click the top point of this construction line here. And now that those are both selected, I'm going to hit coincident. Alright. And one last dimension here, because I can still drag this around. I'm going to give this a dimension of 4. Okay. Now I'm going to use the trim tool to get rid of this part of the circle that I don't need anymore. So click that, and you're going to hold down the left mouse button while it's not touching any part of the sketch, and you're going to drag while holding down the left mouse button through any line you want to get rid of. And you can see that it's leaving just this one part of the circle. Now I want to mirror this circle on the other end so that I don't have to repeat that whole process again. So this is just another way to cut corners or save some time. So I'm going to click Mirror Entities up here, and I'm going to select that circle, just that section of circle that we just created, and that should be under the Entities to Mirror. So entity is like any line or any part of the sketch, basically. And then make sure Copy is selected, and then we want to mirror about this center vertical line here. And you should see that it's showing you what it's going to look like with the yellow highlighted area, and click OK. All right. So now we have our first kind of curved edge. And if I go back quickly to the Galaxy phone, I'm gonna try to find a view that shows that. Let's see. Okay. Well, you can kind of see that it's got like a curved edge to it. Let's see if I can find a little bit better one. Yeah, I'll I'll have some images on the screen in class so you guys can see it in each view. But just take my word for it right now that it's got a little bit of curve right there. All right, so now we're going to use our new tool under the surfacing menu here. And we're going to extrude surface. All right. Extrude surface is just like extrude boss under the regular features, except for you're extruding basically a flat plane that doesn't have any thickness to it. And we're going to, excuse me. All right, so we're going to click on mid-plane here, which is going to extrude equally in both directions. And under the dimension value here, I'm going to type in 159 millimeters. All right. And select OK. Great. So now we kind of have that first little curve of the top of the screen. And now we need to kind of trim the edges so that it has that circular, or the round bezel from the S8. So let's go ahead and click on our front plane and click Sketch. I'm just going to zoom to that area. And now I'm going to need a circle tool. And I'm just going to click anywhere. Try not to click on the line because that will automatically add a relation that you don't want. So click on the surface here and just drag it up. And you can just click anywhere. Make sure there's no relations yet. But we do want to add a tangency to this top surface here. So under Add Relations, select Tangent. And now you see that the circle is snapped to this line so that the edges are touching. And we're going to do the same thing with this other vertical edge here. So select both that vertical edge and the circle and hit Tangent. All right. Now we want to dimension this so that it doesn't move. And we're going to dimension that 16 millimeters. All right. Now, so I don't have to repeat this same process on all four corners. I'm going to go ahead and do the mirror tool again. But in order for me to do the mirror tool, I need to create some center lines so that it knows where to mirror across. So let's do a horizontal line. And then another construction line, or center line, from the origin, again, vertically up to this edge. So now when I click, now I can click Mirror Entities, select this circle that we just drew. Once again, make sure Copy is checked, and we're going to mirror about this line first. Select OK. And now we're going to do mirror one more time. We're going to select both these top circles. Then mirror about this horizontal construction line. And click OK. Now, everything should be blacked out if you followed my steps closely. So now we're going to go back into our Surfaces menu here. And over to Trim Surface. What this does is it uses your sketch to, it's kind of like a cookie cutter. So whatever sketch you draw is, imagine that as any shape of a cookie cutter. and once I click trim, I can select either keep or remove selections, and then in this case I want remove, and then I can kind of hover over this surface here, and you'll see that it changes colors. That's basically saying that my sketch I drew is it knows where I'm looking to have it cut, but I need to tell it exactly where I want it cut. So I just want these corners here. So I'm going to go around and select each corner, and that's it, just those. Make sure, like once I said, or once again, please make sure you do remove selections. And now click OK. Alright, now I'm just going to go ahead and save my desktop right now. Hold on. Galaxy. And now remember, this is something you guys got to keep in a habit of, because apparently some computers have been crashing. So let's just make sure that you have a good you constantly save. It's a really good habit to keep up. I've lost hours upon hours of modeling before. So just get in the habit of doing that. All right. Okay, so next step, we're going to click on the front plane and click sketch. And now we want to do an offset of this line here that goes all the way around. So what I'm going to do is under my sketch tools, select offset entities. I'm going to change my value to 0.75 millimeters. And now I'm just going to kind of go around and select each of these points. Sometimes if it's on a flat surface, you can select this select chain here and it will automatically do this for you. But in this case, because it's not a flat surface, it wants you to go and click every point. So make sure you're going around just like me and selecting each point or each edge of this surface here. So it should all be highlighted in blue, or it should be blue, but it'll be highlighted in it'll be highlighted in some color, depending on what settings you have. Alright, now click OK. And it should be offset to the outside here by 0.75 millimeters. If it offset to the inside, that means that you may have accidentally hit reverse. So make sure you have it going the right direction. Alright, now we're done with this sketch here. Alright. Now if you remember, we used lofts in the first lesson with the pencil sharpener, and now we're going to do a surface loft that's pretty much the same, but just using a flat surface. So go ahead and click that, and we're going to select our sketch we just made, and then we want to select this edge here, but to do that we need to right click first, then go to Selection Manager. Now you have an option you have this closed loop, open loop, select group, select region, and standard selection. We want to do select closed loop for this one, and it's going to allow us to select this entire edge in one click. There you go. And now click OK. All right, so with lofts, you're going to see these green circles here. You typically want these to be lined up vertically. If you see, I just kind of clicked on this top one here, and I kind of started dragging it, and it's going to snap to the next point on that edge. I just want them. It's good practice to have those kind of in line like that. If I don't, it kind of creates some weird geometry. A good way to think about lofts is it's kind of like extrusions, but you have a lot more control as to the shape of the extrusion. But if you don't do them properly, they can be a little difficult to work with. But just kind of follow along with how I'm doing it, and then you can always play with lofts on your own time to kind of see all the different things you can do with them. So we want, right now it's doing a straight loft, so it's going to give it like a hard edge, but we want this to be rounded off, because right now what I'm doing is I'm creating only the top half of this phone. After this, I'm going to be mirroring this whole surface, so that's going to create the whole shape. So what that means is I need to here, I'm just going to go to this view right here. I want a nice curve, a tangent curve coming up from this bottom plane here, and then not quite tangent to this line, but you'll see what I mean in just a second. So if I open up my start end constraints tab here, I can choose some drop down menus for each of those loops that I selected. So the first one, if I do normal to profile, and for some reason it snapped that line, or that's circle back. Okay, so what I just did is I just made sure that these were still in line. Okay, so because I chose normal to profile, it is saying that it wants this curve, or this edge wants to curve at a tangent direction from that first sketch that I chose. So because this sketch is on a flat plane, it is going to loft upwards at a tangency to that curve. And you can change the amount that this is tangent to it. Oops, what just happened? Oh, sorry, I just dragged back. Okay, so for this lesson, we just want to do 1 here, but sometimes you can increase that, and for some reason it keeps wanting to snap back there. But we're just going to leave this at 1 for now. Okay, there we go. And click OK. All right. Now, like I said before, we're going to mirror this, these surface bodies, so that it completes the form. So let's go ahead and do that now. Under the Features tab, click Mirror. And then under the mirror face plane, we're going to choose this front plane here. And we want to mirror these bodies. So we need to open up the Body tab and select these 2 surfaces here. And click OK. All right. Now the final step to convert these kind of flat surfaces, or these non-thickness material surfaces, to a complete solid body. Because right now, if you look over at your feature tree, it just says surface bodies here instead of regular bodies. So if I go here and I and I hide one of them, you can see that it's, like I said, it's kind of like you're just gluing pieces of paper together. But we want this to be a solid form. So I'm going to unhide. I'm going to show this surface so they're all visible. And I'm going to go to my Surfaces tab again and click Knit Surface. And I'm just going to go and select each one of these. And if you have these gaps here, that's fine. At least for this lesson. Luckily, it's gonna fill in those gaps for me. It could have just been from the loft, but that's fine. Now we're going to make sure that the Create Solid box is checked, and click OK. Now, if you notice, on my feature tree, I don't have the surface bodies anymore. I just have solid bodies. Now I have completely made this into a three-dimensional filled shape, and I can prove that by clicking the section view here. And I'm just gonna pick this plane here, and now you can see that it's fully solid. Okay. Now you can kind of see like we've already created pretty much the general shape of the S8. Now it's really just time to go in and start adding the various features. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is click on the front plane again and create a new sketch. I'm just going to zoom out to that surface or that face, and once again we need to do another offset of this edge. So just like before, we're going to click the Offset Entities tool. I'm going to change my value to 0.4 millimeters. And I'm just going to click on this face or this edge first, and just to see what direction it's going to go. I want to make sure it's going the other direction. So I'm going to click reverse here. Now I can see that it's offsetting to the inside, which is what I want. So now I'm going to go and, just like before, I'm going to select each of these edges. All right. And click OK. All right. So another feature that you guys have already used on the pencil sharpener project was called the split tool. That's using a sketch to divide one object into multiple objects. So to get to that again, we are going to go into Insert, Features, Split, and I'm going to choose Cut Part. And just like that trim tool on the surface trim tool, if I hover over various parts of this body, it's showing you where that sketch is dividing. So I just want to click. I can click either of these. Just make sure you only select one, and make sure that this Consume Cut Bodies is turned off. If I left that on, what would happen is any body that I select here is going to be deleted, or it's going to be deleted once I click OK. But I just want these to be separated into two parts, so make sure that's unchecked. All right. Now, when you use a sketch for a split feature, the sketch is usually left here. And what I like to do to kind of keep it my model neat is to go ahead and hide this sketch here. So I'm going to click on it, left click or right click, and hit the hide icon. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we want to create all of the various details on the front of this screen. So I'm going to once again pull up the photo of the phone here, and you see we have these like little circles on the top. We have the little speaker, and then we also have the part of the screen, or part of the front that's the screen. So we want to create a sketch that details all of those parts. Okay, so once again, we're going to click on our front plane, click Sketch. We're going to zoom out here, and let's start with the screen shape. So what I'm going to do is create a rectangle off of my origin here. And make sure you don't click on one of these lines. Like I said, if you do that, it automatically adds a relation. And a lot of times that's where some students have issues, is they have relations that they didn't mean to create, and it's causing issues. So like I said, you can always drag your sketch around to see where it's having issues if you are running into problems. Okay, so let's give this rectangle some dimensions. For the vertical line, it's going to be 147.5 millimeters. And the width here is going to be 71 millimeters. All right. And I'm just going to give these corners a radius, which is like it's rounding off those hard edges here. And we have a little tool up here called Sketch Fillet, which when I hover over any of the corners, it kind of shows you how big it's going to be. But I want to change my value here to 4 millimeters. And now I click on all 4 of these corners of the rectangle. And hit OK. Great. And so just to keep my feature tree nice and neat, I'm going to add in the other features here in the same sketch. So there's like the front facing camera and the speaker and all that. So let's start with the speaker, and we're gonna do the straight slot sketch tool. And I like to under the slot types, you have multiple options. I like to do the second one, which is basically the first point you click on is the center point, and then the second is going to be how long it is. You'll see what I mean in a second here. So I want this to be vertical to the origin, and I'm dragging it out. And then I clicked again. Sorry, let me just do that again and explain. So I'm clicking first in the middle, and then I'm dragging it out. And see, it's kind of wobbling around. That's fine. We can fix it later. But so then I'm going to click again, to set my length, and I just have to drag my mouse away from that point, and I'm going to set the radius of that slot. Alright, so yeah, make sure this is horizontal, this center line here, and then we're going to click on the midpoint and the origin, so holding down Shift or Control to select both of them, and we're going to give that a vertical relation. Now it can only move up and down, and we're going to give this the slot width 7 millimeters. And we want to now set the radius of the slot to be, so we're clicking on the circle here, or the half circle, and we're going to give that 0.5 millimeters. And now to finish it up, we need to dimension basically the height, or the distance that it's going to be from the screen. So let's click on the top edge of the screen and the center line of the slot, and let's give that a dimension of 2.75 millimeters. Alright, now we have all the various kind of circle parts of this screen. So we're going to do this one first, so just kind of click anywhere. It doesn't matter where you click, we're going to be moving them around. So let's create one circle here, one circle here, and then on the other side we're going to do one here, one here, one here, and one here. So it's 4 on this side, 2 on this side. And for this exercise, we're just going to have them all be in line. So we want all these center points here to be horizontal to each other. So let's go ahead and select all of the midpoints, even this one right here, the slot, and these two. So now with all of them selected, I can hit horizontal. Now they're all locked in line with each other, so I can't move them up and down. And we'll give now let's dimension the distance between these features. So click on the middle of this circle here and the middle of the slot, and give that a dimension of 13.25. Now we're going to do the center point here and center point here, and give that a dimension of 3 millimeters. Now the center point of this circle and this circle, that's going to be 5.25. And now this circle and this circle will be 4. Now on the other side, we got that point and this circle point. It's going to be 14.25. And the last point is going to be 6 millimeters. All right. Now the last thing to do to set these circles to be black is give them radius dimensions. So let's just go from left to right. This one's going to be 1.5. This one's going to be 2.5. This one is also 1.5. And so is this one. And on the right side, this one's going to be 4 millimeters. And this last one is going to be 2 millimeters. All right. Now, if you did everything the same as me, everything should be black on the sketch. And we're going to do another feature that it's very common, especially when you're going to be rendering this image. This is kind of like it's a good shortcut to instead of making multiple bodies, you can split up one body into multiple faces. And if that doesn't make sense, just kind of follow along with me and I'll explain along the way. So up on the sketch tab, you hopefully will have a split line here, but if you don't, let me show you how to find it. Let's see. Split line. Okay, so under features, you can also find it under the curves icon, and you'll see split line as well. I'm just telling you multiple ways to find it just in case. Some people's settings are set up a little differently, so it's good to know other ways you can find the same thing. So we're going to click split line here. And because we're still in our sketch, it's automatically filled out this portion here, which is just like the trim and the split. It's using the sketch to kind of cut a surface or a face, and I need to tell it now what face I want the sketch to split. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on these 3 faces here. Alright. Now with all 3 of those faces selected, and I click OK, if I just kind of click out of the image here, just click on the background, I should be able to see these. I've now added these edges to my face of this part. And why I did this is I can now go in and change the appearance of these faces. I'm not going to do this now. I'm going to save this to the end, but I just want to explain that's why I'm going to be doing that for a lot of these various features, just to kind of save time, because I could make this model really, really detailed, but it would take probably 3 or 4 classes to do. So just for the sake of time, we're going to do it this way, which is still an okay way of doing it, especially if your main intention is to do renderings. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part, which is, let's see. Okay, yeah. We're going to now add the features to the bottom here, which is like the auxiliary jack, the charging port, and the speaker. And there's also like a little reset button here. So let's click our top plane and start a sketch from there. So I'm just zooming to that so I can see the top plane. All right. So let's start with the auxiliary cable. So we're going to do, auxiliary port. So we're going to hit the circle tool, and on this center line here, we're just going to click on that and just drag it out anywhere. Right now we're just kind of roughing out these shapes, and then we're going to go back and fix them up with dimensions. So we're going to need another straight slot, and I can click the drop down menu here just to access the center point straight slot faster. And now click on your origin and drag it anywhere. Just kind of drag it out. Then we're going to left click again. And now just drag the mouse out anywhere here. And click one more time to exit it. And now I can just hit escape to exit that tool. I'm going to add another circle, kind of like around here. Just a little small one. That's going to be the reset, kind of like the hard reset button. And now the speaker, which is, we're going to do that pretty easily by just, we're going to do a vertical slot. So just like I did the other ones, but now I'm drawing it in vertical orientation. And once I set this dimension, we're going to actually pattern this. So we only need to draw one at the moment. So let's go back over to this circle here, and let's give that a dimension of 3.6 millimeters. And now we're going to dimension the middle of that circle to the origin. And that's going to be 18.5. And just so you guys know that, I mean, these dimensions aren't 100% accurate to the actual cell phone. They're pretty close, but I've made some liberties of kind of rounding certain numbers just to make it a little easier for everyone. Now we're going to dimension the length of the slot here to be 6. So like I said, I'm just clicking on that construction line here to create that dimension. And now I need a radius dimension for this circle, or this half circle, and that's going to be 1.25. Now this little hole over here, it's going to be 0.75 millimeters in diameter. And it's going to be 1 millimeter, from that middle, that center line. And from the center of that circle to the origin is 11.5. Now let's do the center of the origin to the center of this slot and make that 16. Now let's dimension this, the length of this slot to be 2 millimeters. And the radius here will be 0.5 millimeters. Okay. So if you don't see all of these, any of these sketches constrained, like I said before, if you see like a 1-edge blue, kind of drag on it, and that will help you figure out what's wrong, hopefully. Now we need to pattern this slot here. So click on Linear Sketch Pattern. And click on this slot. And we're going to change the value of the distance between these the pattern to be 2 millimeters. That means there's a 2 millimeter gap between the center point of this, the entity that I selected, which is the slot. And I'm going to change this the number of instances to 5. Okay. And then click OK. Now this may still be blue for you, so to constrain that a little bit, because you can see I can now kind of like drag these around, I want to drag the center point of the second line, or the second slot, to this center line here to keep it from moving up and down. And I'm just going to give that a dimension from the center of the first one to the center of the second one, and that's going to be 2 millimeters. Now you may still see that this edge is blue, but it's fine. It's I can't drag it around, so it's constrained. All right. Now we're gonna click OK. Or actually no, excuse me. We're gonna stay in the sketch, and we're going to go to the Features tool or tab, and we're going to Extrude Cut. And right now it's going the wrong direction, so I'm going to go to under the Directions tab, click the double arrows, which reverses the direction. And because now these two bodies are separated, this outer kind of this aluminum edge from the glass in the screen, I'm going to uncheck Auto Select under Feature Scope, and I'm going to click this body here. So make sure sometimes you want to set this from blind to through all. That means that if you ever change the dimension on something, it will automatically update this feature so that it's always cutting through it, no matter how big you make the phone. Alright, now click OK. Great. So we're moving along. Now they have like these little antenna pieces. They kind of look like a different color band on either end here on both sides. That's actually for the Bluetooth signal to get outside of that metal or aluminum cage, because Bluetooth has a really hard time escaping metal. So that's, if you ever wonder what that was on your phone, that's your antenna. So we're gonna do a center rectangle, and we're going to click on the center line and drag it up to this top edge line here. So I'm adding, it should automatically add a relation to the center line and to this top edge. And I'm going to do a center line, construction line from the origin up to this top edge, because I'm going to be mirroring this sketch to the other side as well. Alright, so I'm going to dimension from this side this time, just because that's the dimension that I got online, and to the center line. Okay, so I chose the outermost edge of that rectangle to the origin, and I'm gonna make that 27 millimeters. Now the thickness of this triangle, or this rectangle, so like I said, sometimes this will happen where when I'm trying to dimension something, it's going to automatically select a point or a line that I had previously selected. So to get out of that, hit escape, and so now I'm only selected this line here, and I'm going to make that 1.5 millimeters. Alright, now I'm going to hit mirror entities. I'm going to select this part here. I'm going to mirror about this construction line and hit OK. So I'm going to go back up to my split tool, just like we did before, which is under Insert, Features, Split. And I'm gonna hit selected bodies here, and I'm gonna choose this. I gotta first click on the box here, and now I can hit this outer body and click cut bodies. Now I'm going to hover over this point, and I'm going to click. I'm going to click this selection here, this one, and on the other side as well, this one and this one. All right. You can kind of see that's where, if I zoom to the side, those are the edges that I created that rectangle on. And make sure that your consume cut bodies is not checked. Make sure that's unchecked. And hit split. All right. Now those are going to be separated so that when we render them, it will be we can assign them a different material. So you're kind of getting multiple ways of being able to assign multiple materials. One is by creating separate bodies, like I just did. Another one is by creating a split face, which is like the split line tool, which means this is still part of the same body, but I'm basically telling it that I may want to assign this a different color. So, and I'll get I don't want to get too far into that. Let's keep going. All right, so let's get the top features done, which is like the little SIM card port, and there's some other little circle over here. So let's go to top plane, new sketch, and you see that this sketch is still here from when we split that part. So let's go and hide that because it's a bit distracting. So I'm gonna left click or right click on that and hit hide. So now it's gone. All right. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is our circle tool. On our center line, we're going to just draw a little circle here, and a little circle here, and then we're going to do another slot, but this time we're going to do a straight slot, because we're going to click on the inside of this circle here. We're going to drag it over a little bit, and we're just going to drag it out about there. All right. Now let's go ahead and dimension this. We want this circle to be 7.1 millimeters from the origin. And you'll see that the slot stretched or moved with it because this circle, this point of the slot has a relation to the center point of the circle, so they'll always move together. And now we're going to give a dimension for the length of the slot, which is going to be 16.25 millimeters. And the diameter of the circle is going to be 1 millimeter. And the radius of this semicircle is going to be 1.1 millimeters. All right. Now I want to do an offset of this line because I'm going to kind of cut this shape out, and I still want part of this body to remain when I do my extrude cut. So the way I'm going to do that this time is by offsetting. So offset entities. I'm going to change my value to 0.1 millimeters and click anywhere on the slot, and it should kind of select the whole thing. Make sure it's offsetting outwardly and click OK. Now let's dimension this other circle over here, which is going to be 1 millimeter in diameter, and the distance between the center of that circle and the origin will be 24.5 millimeters. Alright, now go ahead and hit Features, Extrude Cut. And you'll see it, in this situation, it's asking me to select, basically the first box that's highlighted is selected contours. And that's because I have multiple, it's not quite sure where it wants me to extrude cut this. So I know I want it to do the in between these two sketches here. So if I click that, like in the middle of, in between the offset and the original slot, and then this circle here, you'll see that it's just extrude cutting that area. And I'm just gonna zoom back into that view and click this other circle on the inside of that. So it makes, if you need to zoom in a little bit and make sure you're clicking inside of those two sketches. And under Feature Scope, unselect Auto Select, and we're going to click this out, or this body right here, and make sure under the Direction tab you hit Through All, and now you can hit OK. So it's asking me right here what bodies I want to keep, because I'm now about to create multiple bodies. So basically, let's see what it says. If I hit selected bodies, now it's creating this extra body here, and I want both of those. So I'm gonna keep all bodies selected and hit OK. So now you can kind of see that I have that SIM card slot feature done, and I only needed to use one sketch and one feature to create all of this. Alright, now on to the buttons. We're going to start with the button on this side here. So we're going to click on the right plane and make a new sketch. We're going to zoom to this orientation here. And on the center line, we are going to do, it doesn't matter, we can just do any of these slots. And just click it once on the center line, and again, and a third time, so that we get kind of a shape like that. And we're going to dimension the center of this slot to the origin, and we're going to make that 25 millimeters. And now I want to click the construction line in the middle of the slot and give that a dimension of 8 millimeters. And just like before, we're going to hit the semicircle and give that a radius of 0.6. Alright. Alright, so we want to extrude this button out. And for this, we are going to, I mean, we can do this a lot of different ways. But the way that I set my model up, I'm going to use, I'm going to change where I'm extruding from. So I'm going to click on this drop down here, and by default it's going to extrude from the sketch plane, but I don't really need it to go all the way into the middle of this model. So I'm going to hit vertex here, and if you remember with the car rim project, we use the same tool, and you have to be able to select a point. So you can see if I hover over various of these intersections of edges, I get little circles that pop up. That means that these are edges that I can select. So in this situation, I'm going to hit this top edge here. And I chose that because it's still kind of sticking inside of the model. And I'm going to change my my blind here to 1 millimeter. Actually, I'm going to go 1.25. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Yeah. Alright, so 1.25. And make sure that your merge result is turned off. Okay. And hit OK. Now I want to kind of create a cut around the button, because there's going to be a little bit of a parting line between the button and this sidewall here. And what I can do is I can actually reuse that same sketch that I just made for that extrude to create a cut. And so if I open up the drop down menu on this feature and select that sketch again and hit extruded cut, make sure your direction is going the same way that you extruded. So I'm going to hit reverse direction, and I'm going to hit this drop down here. I'm going to choose through all, and so that it's not good enough to do it the same, to extrude the same, extrude cut the same amount of material that I extruded. I want a little bit of a gap to show around the edge of the button. So what I can do here is I can check this box under next to thin feature, and what that does is I'm basically creating a new thickness that is going to be extruded around that sketch. So I'm gonna change that value to 0.1, and now you can see that it's just extruding kind of like a band that's offset around that original sketch. And if I hit auto select, uncheck auto select, and I want to highlight this edge band here and hit OK. Now it's asking me again if I want what bodies I want to keep. This time I do want to get rid of one, because I don't need the body that's leaving, that's kind of intersecting with the button. So if I can kind of click on the name of these bodies, and it will change the color. So right now it's highlighting, whatever highlights in pink is the one that I'm clicking on. So I want to keep this big edge, but I don't need that little section here. So let's just select that first box and hit OK. Now I can hide this button, and now I see that I have an empty area here. That way it just adds a lot more realism when I do my rendering. And honestly, I could probably make that a little bit tighter, but we don't have to do that this time. Because a lot of these phone companies, they have pretty tight tolerances now. So they make those pretty close together. Alright, moving on to the next side. We're going to do the other buttons. So once again, choose right plane and sketch. And we're going to be focusing on this side. Alright, so once again we need to make 2 new slots. So it doesn't matter which slot type you choose. Well, I mean, it has to be the first 2. But we're just going to drag them out here, just kind of roughly set these up. And then we're going to dimension them later. And make sure you're just starting on that center line. Alright, so the length of the first one is going to be 21.5. And the length of the second one is going to be 8.5. And the distance between the origin and the center of the first slot is 15. And the distance between this one and this one is 26.5. Now the radius for both of these will be 0.6. Okay, now those are constrained. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the other side, which is go to Features, Extrude, Boss Base, kind of move my model around. I can see that the arrow is pointing in the wrong direction, so I have to choose reverse direction here. And I'm going to change my from. So I don't want it to extrude from the sketch plane. I'm going to change that to vertex again. And I'm going to choose this top point just like I did before. And it should be 1.25 millimeters. And make sure you uncheck merge result because we don't want that to be merged with this this edge here. And hit OK. Alright. Now just like before, we're going to do another cut extrude thin with that sketch that we just made. So I'm opening up this feature to see the sketch that that's under it. Extrude cut. And once again, I'm going to do a through all instead of blind on the direction. I'm going to check the box next to thin feature. And if it doesn't already, change that to 0.1. And you can also see that I can change the direction of the thin feature as well. So you want to make sure that it's on the outside of that button we just created. And now uncheck auto select under feature scope, and we're going to hit this this body on the edge here. And OK. And just like before, we're going to go to selected bodies. And this time there's 3 options because I extrude cutted 2 buttons this time. So I already know, since I did this on the other side, I just want this body 1 option. And hit OK. Alright. We are almost done here. The last bit we have to do is the camera on the back. So I know this is a bit more lengthy lesson that's from the other tutorials. So if I'm moving too quickly, I apologize, but you know, if I feel like this is a little bit more difficult for some of you, I'll give you a little bit more time on this one. But we're getting a lot of good practice with this model. You're going to be learning a lot of features that you'll use quite a bit. All right, so now that we've kind of rotated the model around to the back, we are going to, well, I'm going to save first. And I'm going to hit the front plane and create a sketch. Now just kind of rough these shapes out with me as I go, and if you need to, I'll kind of zoom in on everything at the end, and you can pause it and just kind of you know, move at your own pace. Okay, so firstly I'm going to do a rectangle, and I'm going to do that off the origin, kind of vertical to the origin here. So I'm going to do one rectangle there, another rectangle here, a little bit skinnier, third rectangle here, even skinnier, and then inside of this rectangle I'm going to do two more rectangles. Alright, so let's start dimensioning these out. I'm going to choose the center of this first one, and I'm going to make sure that it has a relation to the origin so that it doesn't move around. So I selected both of those points, and I'm hitting vertical, so that way it can't move side to side. And to keep it from moving up and down, let's dimension from the origin to the center of that rectangle, or I guess in that case it's a square, 54.8. Now let's dimension the width of this square to be 13 millimeters. And because I know this is a square, instead of dimensioning this side, what I can do is I can add a relation by selecting both of like one vertical and one horizontal line here, and I can add an equal relation. So now no matter what this dimension is, it changes this dimension to be the same. So basically I'm telling it it's going to be a square no matter what. Now this rectangle's width is going to be 7.3, and the height will be 12.3, and the distance between the right rectangle and the middle square is 14.1. And while we're at it, let's just do the center of the square to the center of the left rectangle and make that 11.9. All right. Now let's select the midpoints of each of these square and rectangles, just these three big ones, and let's give those a horizontal relation so that they're all in line. And you'll see that these squares kind of left where they left their they're supposed to be inside of this. So let's move them back in and make sure that they have a relation to the center. So their center point has a relation to the center point of the rectangle that they're in. So let's make a vertical relation. Now they can only move up and down, not left and right. All right. Now this rectangle is going to have a height of 11 and a width of 3.5. And this top rectangle, the first little rectangle is going to have a width of 3 and a height of 3.6. Now let's drag it down in here so it's back inside, and let's give a dimension from the top edge of the bigger rectangle to the top edge of the little rectangle and give that a dimension of 0.5. And now let's do the bottom one, which is 5.3. And a width of 3.2. Now I know this is probably super boring. You know, not everything is. Some of the stuff can be a little tedious, I know, but it's got to be done, unfortunately. So let's give this one last dimension. So the bottom edge of this rectangle to the bottom edge of the little rectangle, and that's going to be 0.3. All right. Now the last thing we need to do to these is add radiuses or fillets to these edges. So let's go ahead and click the sketch fillet tool. And most of these are going to be 1 millimeter. So let's go ahead and let's start with this line, or this point here. Basically, we're going to click on every single point of this big left rectangle and the little rectangles inside of it. So all of these. So it should look kind of like that, or it should look exactly like that. And hit OK. Now we need to add fillets to the square, but those are going to be a bit bigger. So let's change the value to 2.5 and click OK. So it's asking me, it's saying a segment being filleted has a midpoint or equal length. That's because I gave it a relation so that if I change the value of one edge, it will change the other edge. I'm just going to click yes in this situation. Let's see what happens. All right, nothing yet. So let's go. Yeah, it's going to do this for each corner. So just keep hitting yes. And now that they're all symmetric, it's not giving me that error anymore. And we're going to hit OK. All right. Now this last rectangle is going to have fillets of 1.75. Now I can click each of these corners. Okay, and now that I'm done, I'm just clicking the OK button again to exit out of that. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the front lenses here. I'm going to do a split line. So like I said before, if you don't have the split line here like I do, you're going to go to your features tab, And under the curves icon here, click that and choose split line. And we're going to be just selecting this one face here on the back. So the back face here. And click OK. Now if I kind of click on the background of this viewport, that goes away, and I can see what I just did. Now I'm going to save again because we're almost done, so we don't want to lose our work so far. Now we need to create a little bezel around what this kind of the camera on the back is. So let's just click on this face here, and because this should be flat for you, and because it's flat, I will be able to add a new sketch off of this face. So make sure you don't hit edit sketch. You want to hit the new sketch here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this edge here by hitting convert entities. And so I don't have to re-sketch this out. I can just click that face and hit OK. And it added a sketch for me of that edge. And I'm going to offset this new sketch here by clicking offset entities, select chain over here, and I'm going to change my dimension to 0.5 millimeters. And now when I click one of these edges, I'm going to offset that entire shape and hit OK. Now I want to extrude this, so go to your features, extrude boss base, and I'm going to do a value of 0.1. So just a little small extrusion, nothing too crazy. But I want to uncheck the merge result. I want that to be its own body for when we render. And hit OK. Alright, now almost the last thing, we need to do a extrude cut. So just like I did before, we're going to click on this back face here and do a new sketch. And I'm going to click on this area now, so that's highlighted, and choose convert entities. Now it's automatically created a sketch for me. And I'm going to, let's see how much is this, okay. Now I'm going to extrude cut. So under the features tab, extrude cut 0.3 millimeters. And I'm going to do something new this time. I want this to what's called draft or taper inwards to create kind of like a 45-degree cut. So under my direction, I have this button towards the bottom that says draft on off. I'm going to click that and then change the degree to 45 degrees. Now I'm cutting at a 45 degree, basically I'm adding a chamfer around the edge here. And under feature scope, uncheck that auto select and choose that back face and hit OK. Alright, we're pretty much done here. Now we just need to add fillets. I'm going to say it again. Let's start with, let's just fillet our buttons for now. So hit our fillet tool here. And I can just click on the top face. Once I change this to, let's see, 0.3. Yeah, so 0.3 fillet. on that. I can't select this face at the same time because it only lets me fillet one body at a time, and these are not connected, so I have to do them individually, unfortunately. So hit OK. So we're going to do the same thing with the other buttons. So click fillet, the top face of that button, hit OK. Same thing over here, fillet, top face, and hit OK. Now come around to the back side, and let's see, how much should I give that one? Okay, we're going to give this little bezel here, so a 0.2 millimeter fillet. All right, and save. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is set this up so that we can, when we render it in the next lesson, we'll be able to assign specific materials or labels to various areas on the phone. And right now, KeyShot will automatically separate the bodies out for us, but not the split faces. So because we want to assign different materials to these faces, we need to change their color, their appearance. And what that does is it allows KeyShot to know, hey, this is going to be a different, they want to make this a different texture or material, even though it's in the same body. So to do that, let's first start with this face and right click it, and you see the appearances button here. If I click on the drop down arrow by that, I see an option of face, split line, body, and this is Galaxy S8, which is the overall part. I'm just going to hit face this time. And I'm just going to go through and just change their color. So I'm just going to start with, on the left side here, I have a color palette. I'm just going to kind of go down the chart and give these various different colors, which will, they need to be different colors. And it doesn't matter what it looks like here, because when we render it, that's when we really make it look nice and realistic. So just go down and let's give each of these faces a different color. So click on it, right click, drop down on their appearance, select face, and I'm just kind of going down the list. All right. So once you have all of these buttons done, or these circles and other features done, let's select the screen, the faces of the screen. So I'm going to hold down Shift to select all three of these faces. And just like before, right click, appearance, face. And I'm going to give that a different color. And let's see, I think the only ones I have left to do are the back. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So let's start with this one. I mean, it doesn't matter which order you do it in. Just make sure they're all different. Ooh. this interface. And actually for this one, we're gonna create like a nice little metallic highlight here. So we're gonna need to select all of these chamfered faces here. And under appearance, we'll give that the last color change. And yeah, well, actually we need to do this interface as well, a different color. Okay, so you see I now have I've assigned various colors to these different pieces, so that now when I go into KeyShot, I'll be able to I'll be able to kind of cheat and add like a picture of a camera here instead of actually having to go and model one. And same thing with the speaker. I can actually take an image of the Galaxy S8 and crop out parts of that image and use those as kind of like labels in KeyShot. It's a nice little, it's kind of like a quick way of adding a bunch of features without having to model them. Alright guys, so that's the last part of this tutorial. I know it's a bit longer than the other ones, so like I said before, I might break it up into 2 separate parts or make it extend into 2 classes. So thanks for kind of walking along with me, and I'm sure if you have questions, just let me know and I'll do my best to help you out. Alright, thanks.